There's a question I believe every person should ask themselves, not once in a while, but every single day. Why do I do what I do? It's not just a question for businesses or brands, it's for people. Because whether you realize it or not, your actions are driven by something. And if you don't take the time to understand what that something is, you'll wake up one day surrounded by accomplishments that don't fulfill you, people who don't inspire you, and a version of yourself you barely recognize. So let's go there. Let's start with why. Imagine a house, not just any house, but your dream home. Beautiful walls, a spacious kitchen, rooms filled with light and color. You put in all the furniture, hang the art, maybe even get that espresso machine you've always wanted. But what if beneath all of it, the foundation is cracked? What if no matter how beautiful you make it, the base is fragile, unstable? It won't matter how many pictures you hang or how expensive the couch is, it will collapse. That's your life if you ignore yourself in the process of trying to build everything else. See, we live in a world that rewards output. We're taught to chase achievements, hit deadlines, win promotions, build businesses, accumulate likes, followers, validation. And there's nothing inherently wrong with achievement. In fact, working hard towards something meaningful is one of the most fulfilling parts of life. But when the focus is only on what we do and not on who we are while we're doing it, we trade depth for speed. We build up rather than dig deep. We impress, but we don't necessarily grow. That's the cost of skipping the inner work. I've met people, brilliant people, who can build million-dollar companies but can't look themselves in the mirror. I've spoken to leaders who can manage hundreds of employees but can't manage their own stress. I've known people who give the best advice but live in quiet anxiety. These are not failures. These are signals. Signals that something is misaligned, that we've learned how to perform but forgotten how to become. The truth is, the most important work you will ever do is the work you do on yourself. That doesn't mean navel-gazing or becoming self-absorbed. It means being honest about what drives you, about what scares you, about where you're still growing. It means asking questions that don't always come with clean answers. Why do I react the way I do when I'm under pressure? Why do I feel the need to prove myself? Why does success feel hollow sometimes, even when I've worked so hard for it? Those aren't easy questions, but they're real, and asking them is the beginning of personal development. Not as a buzzword, but as a way of life. Working hard on yourself means learning how to respond, not just react. It means recognizing that your childhood, your failures, your insecurities, they shape you, but they don't define you. It means building emotional fitness, the kind that doesn't just help you survive tough times, but transform through them. Think about a tree. The part you admire, the leaves, the branches, the fruit, that's the visible part. That's what gets photographed. But none of it is possible without the root system beneath the ground. That's where the strength lies. That's where the nourishment comes from. You don't see it, but it's doing all the work. You are the same. The world sees your performance, but your root system, your beliefs, your mindset, your self-awareness is what holds everything up. So when I say work hard on yourself, I don't mean just reading a book or listening to a podcast once a week. I mean treating your inner life like the most important project you'll ever take on. And it is. Because if you don't know who you are, you'll let the world decide for you. You'll measure success by someone else's yardstick. You'll pursue goals that aren't really yours. And at some point, when the applause fades, when the novelty wears off, when the lights dim, you'll be left wondering, what was it all for? But when you do the work, when you get clear on your values, when you confront your own patterns, when you make space for rest, reflection, and resilience, you don't just build a better life, you become a better human. And that changes everything. It changes how you show up in relationships. It changes how you lead. It changes how you deal with failure, with criticism, with change. It changes how you treat people who can do nothing for you. It changes how you treat yourself. One of the most powerful things I've ever seen is someone who is deeply rooted in who they are. They're not loud. They're not always the smartest in the room, but they move with clarity, with calm, with purpose, and people feel it. They trust them, not because they're perfect, but because they're real. That's what personal development gives you. It gives you undistracted by noise, undiluted by pressure, and unapologetically authentic. The irony is that when you work harder on yourself, everything else becomes easier. You become more focused, more disciplined, more creative. You stop trying to impress and start trying to impact. You lead from identity, not from insecurity, and people will notice. Because in a world full of people trying to be impressive, it's rare and powerful to meet someone who's simply at peace with themselves. So if you're going to work hard on what lasts. Work hard on the foundation. Work hard on you. Everything else you build will be stronger because of it. And that's a life worth building. One of the most comforting lies we tell ourselves is that we'll grow when the time is right. That somehow, somewhere down the road, life will push us into the next version of ourselves. We wait for the big moment, the turning point, the catalyst. We say things like, one day I'll figure it out, or I'll work on myself when things settle down. But here's the truth. Growth doesn't happen because time passes. It happens because we decide it will. Think about it this way. No one becomes a great leader by accident. No one wakes up suddenly confident, resilient, grounded, and full of purpose just because the calendar flipped to a new year. Growth doesn't come with age. It comes with intention. We all want to be better parents, better partners, better professionals. But how many of us have a process for becoming better? How many of us have a system for self-development that's just as clear as our system for managing a business or running a project? We plan meetings down to the minute, we outline quarterly goals, we draft KPIs and budget forecasts. But when it comes to ourselves, our mindset, our character, our emotional intelligence, we wing it. We hope that reading a few quotes on social media or watching a TED Talk every now and then will transform us. It won't. Because transformation doesn't happen by chance. It's a choice. And not a one-time choice, but a daily one. If you've ever seen someone become great at anything, music, athletics, leadership, speaking, you'll know this. They didn't just show up. They showed up every day. They showed up when they were tired, when no one was watching, when the motivation ran dry. They practiced when others procrastinated. They leaned in when it was easier to lean out. That's not luck. That's design. I once asked a high-performing executive how he managed to keep growing year after year despite already being at the top of his field. He said, "Because I never believe I've arrived." That stuck with me. Growth begins the moment we realize that we're never done. That there's always more to learn, not because we're not enough, but because we're alive. And anything alive is either growing or dying. There is no neutral. The mistake people make is assuming growth is supposed to be exciting all the time. It isn't. Most of the time it's boring. It's unglamorous. It's showing up early, staying a bit later, having hard conversations with yourself. It's saying no to comfort and yes to discipline. It's rereading the same page, doing the extra rep, sitting in silence when distraction would be easier. And yet, that's where the magic is. That's where the shift happens. Not in some dramatic breakthrough, but in the quiet, repeated decisions to keep going. One of the reasons people don't grow intentionally is because growth demands self-awareness. It asks us to look in the mirror and tell the truth. Not the filtered truth we show others, but the raw, unedited version. It's uncomfortable. But discomfort is not a signal to stop. It's a signal to pay attention. Pain, frustration, insecurity, these are not obstacles to growth. They are the path to it. They reveal the cracks, the edges, the places in us that need attention. Growth is not always about adding. Sometimes it's about shedding, unlearning, releasing what no longer serves us, that mindset we inherited, that fear we never questioned, that story we keep telling ourselves about who we are and what we can't do. The beauty of intentional growth is that it gives us agency. We're no longer passengers in our own lives. We become architects. We design our habits, our thoughts, our value. We stop reacting and start creating. And when you commit to that kind of growth, you don't just evolve, you inspire. People feel it. Your energy changes. Your conversations deepen. Your decisions become more grounded. You stop chasing significance and start building substance. You stop needing to prove and start showing up with purpose. But here's the catch. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens brick by brick, day by day. You won't always see the results right away. In fact, there may be long stretches where nothing looks different on the outside, but something is shifting. You're developing roots, strength, wisdom, and those things don't always come with fireworks. They come with faithfulness. Ask yourself, what am I doing today that's growing the person I want to be tomorrow? What am I feeding my fears or my future? What am I choosing, ease or evolution? If the answer is nothing, then start. Start small. Read one chapter. Wake up 15 minutes earlier. Say no to one thing that drains you and yes to one thing that stretches you. Growth is not about intensity. It's about consistency. Little steps taken repeatedly lead to big change. I once heard someone say, if you don't make time for growth, you'll be forced to make time for regret. It's a reminder, life will keep moving, but who we become along the way, that's on us. We all get older, but not everyone gets better. Better takes work. Better takes awareness. Better takes intention. So don't wait for life to force you to grow. Choose it, shape it, design it. Because the version of you that you admire, the one with clarity, strength, purpose, and peace, doesn't come from chance. It comes from choice. And that choice is yours every day. We live in a world obsessed with outcomes. Success is often defined by the results we can show, the titles, the numbers, the trophies. And because of that, we're taught early on to focus on the destination. Graduate with honors. Get the promotion, launch the business, buy the house, win the recognition. And so we push, we strive, we grind. Not because we necessarily enjoy the process, but because we believe that once we arrive at success, everything will make sense. But here's what I've learned. Success doesn't change you, it reveals you. That's why starting with identity, who you are, is everything. When you don't know who you are, success can actually become a burden. It can amplify your insecurities, feed your need for approval, or push you into a version of yourself that doesn't feel true. We've all seen it. The leader who reaches the top but leads from ego. The influencer who gains millions of followers but loses themselves in the process. The professional who climbs the ladder only to realize the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. Why? Because they chase success before building identity. When you build your life on the foundation of what I do, you'll forever be chasing. Because what you do can change, it can be taken, it can fail. But who you are, that's the constant. That's the anchor. And that's what makes success sustainable. Think about a tree. If it only focused on how high it could grow and ignored how deep its roots were, it would collapse at the first storm. But when the roots are strong, the tree can grow tall and weather anything. Identity is your root system. It's the deep understanding of your values, your purpose, your beliefs. And when that's solid, success becomes a natural outgrowth, not a desperate chase. Most people live in reverse. They try to achieve something so they can feel like someone. If I win this award, I'll finally feel confident. If I get this salary, people will respect me. If I hit this milestone, I'll prove I'm enough. But that's a fragile way to live, because your worth becomes conditional, tied to performance, praise, and productivity. And the moment those things shift, your identity collapses with them. But what if you flip the model? What if instead of chasing success to find yourself, you started by becoming yourself? What if you began with identity, asking questions like, who am I when no one's watching? What do I believe in so deeply that I'm willing to be misunderstood for it? What kind of person do I want to be, regardless of what I achieve? When you lead with identity, success becomes an expression of who you are, not a replacement for who you aren't. Let me tell you something that might sound strange. Some of the most successful people I've met don't talk about success that much. They talk about discipline. They talk about service. They talk about legacy. They talk about becoming better, not just doing better. Why? Because they've learned that when you focus on being courageous, being kind, being consistent, doing naturally follows. Their achievements are not fueled by the need to prove something. They're fueled by alignment. And alignment is everything. Alignment means what you believe, what you say, and what you do are all in sync. There's no performance, no pretending, no pressure to become someone else just to fit the mold. You lead with authenticity, you work with integrity, you show up fully, because you're not trying to impress anyone. You're just trying to live in truth. That's what identity gives you. It gives you internal clarity in a world full of external noise. I've met people who are struggling, not because they aren't working hard, but because they're working hard on the wrong things. They're chasing someone else's definition of success. They're measuring themselves with someone else's ruler, and in doing so, they forget what actually matters to them. So here's the question. Who are you becoming? Not what are you achieving, not what are you producing, but who are you becoming in the process? If you're not proud of the answer, don't panic. That's not failure. It's feedback. It's your soul tapping you on the shoulder saying it's time to realign. You don't need to stop chasing goals. You just need to start anchoring them in something deeper. Set goals that reflect your values, not your insecurities. Chase dreams that call to your heart, not just your ego. Build a life that feels right, not just looks right. Because here's the irony. When you lead from identity, success doesn't just follow, it flows. You make better decisions. You attract the right opportunities. You build trust with others because you're clear on who you are. And most importantly, you experience peace. Not because life is perfect, but because you're no longer at war with yourself. When you know who you are, you stop needing the world to tell you. So instead of asking, what should I do? Try asking, who do I want to be? Build that person, grow those roots, and watch as everything else begins to shift around you. Not by force, but by alignment. Because success isn't about having more. It's about being more. More grounded, more authentic, more alive. And that always starts from within. It's easy to look busy. It's easy to fill our days with meetings, tasks, goals, and checklists. It's easy to chase productivity because it gives us a sense of control, tangible progress, external proof that we're moving forward. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The hardest work, the work that truly transforms us, it's not the work we do on the outside. It's the work we do on the inside, the inner work. The silent, invisible, deeply personal work of confronting who we are, what we fear, and what stories we carry that no longer serve us. Most people avoid that kind of work, not because they're lazy, but because it's hard. It's hard to be still. It's hard to sit in silence long enough to hear your own thoughts without distraction. It's hard to face your own patterns, the habits you default to under stress, the narratives you tell yourself when things go wrong, the old wounds you've learned to hide behind achievements and busyness. It's so much easier to stay in motion. Motion gives the illusion of progress, but transformation requires introspection. Think about it. When something goes wrong in our lives, when we fail, when a relationship ends, when we feel lost, our instinct is often to fix the surface, change jobs, move cities, start fresh. And sometimes those things help, but if we don't address what's happening inside us, we'll just recreate the same cycles in new settings. We'll change the scene, but not the script. The script lives inside us. It's the beliefs we've internalized over the years, the voices we've absorbed, parents, teachers, culture, social media, telling us who we should be, what we should want, and how we should act. Some of those voices helped us, but others became weight, quiet limitations disguised as logic, self-doubt disguised as humility, guilt disguised as responsibility. Inner work is about pausing long enough to ask, where did these beliefs come from? Are they mine or did I inherit them? Do they reflect the person I am or the person I had to become to survive? Those are not easy questions, but they're necessary ones. Because you can't lead, love, or live with clarity until you're honest about what's driving you. The most effective leaders I've ever met aren't the loudest or the most charismatic. They're the most self-awares. They know what triggers them. They know where their ego gets in the way. They've done the work to understand their fears, not to eliminate them, but to make sure they don't lead from them. And because of that, people trust them. Not because they're perfect, but because they're grounded. Inner work gives you that grounding. Without it, your confidence is performative. Your decisions are reactive. Your relationships are transactional. But when you do the inner work, you develop something far more valuable than charisma or skill. You develop emotional clarity. And clarity is powerful. It creates alignment between your values and your actions. It creates consistency between what you say and how you show up. It creates peace between the life you live and the person you are becoming. But let's be clear, this work is not glamorous. You don't get awards for becoming more self-aware. No one applauds you for sitting in discomfort or challenging your deepest assumptions. It's quiet work, soul-level work, work that often goes unnoticed by others, but changes everything for you. Sometimes it looks like going to therapy. Sometimes it looks like journaling, reflecting, asking yourself hard questions you've avoided for years. Sometimes it looks like pausing before reacting, so you can choose a different response. Sometimes it looks like forgiveness of others, yes, but more often of yourself. That's the part people don't talk about enough. How much inner work requires grace, not just strength, grace. The ability to be gentle with yourself while still holding yourself accountable. The ability to see your flaws without defining yourself by them. The ability to grow without shaming the person you used to be. Because the truth is, you're not broken, you're becoming. And the fact that you're even willing to do this kind of work says something profound about you. It says you're no longer willing to live on autopilot. It says you're no longer content with surface-level success. It says you're ready for depth, for real, lasting growth that starts from the inside and ripples outward. I wish more people knew that this work doesn't make you weaker, it makes you stronger. Vulnerability isn't weakness. Self-reflection isn't indulgent. Emotional honesty isn't soft. These are the foundations of resilience. These are the roots of trust. These are the tools that create meaningful change. Not just in your life, but in the lives of the people you impact. Because when you do the inner work, it doesn't stay inside. It shows up in how you speak to your children, in how you resolve conflict, in how you make decisions under pressure, in how you treat the people who disagree with you, in how you carry yourself when no one's watching. The world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more honest ones. People who are willing to do the inner work so they can live and lead from a place of wholeness, not ego. So if you find yourself in a season where the outer results aren't showing up yet, where things feel slow, uncertain, messy, don't rush it. That might be the season where the most important work is happening, the invisible work, the inner work. And in the end, that's the work that lasts. We all have a vision in our minds, a version of ourselves we quietly aspire to become. It might be someone who's more confident, more focused, more compassionate, someone who handles stress with grace, someone who builds, leads, loves, and lives with clarity and strength. But between the person we are today and the person we're striving to become, there is a gap. That gap is real, and it won't close with just hope, ambition. That gap closes with discipline. Discipline is the bridge. It's the connector between identity and potential. And yet it's also one of the most misunderstood forces in our lives. We often associate discipline with rigidity, punishment, or deprivation. But real discipline isn't about restriction. It's about alignment. It's about bringing your daily actions into agreement with your long-term values. It's about choosing what matters most over what feels good in the moment. The truth is, anyone can be inspired. Inspiration is easy. It's everywhere. You read a great book, you watch a powerful speech, you feel a surge of motivation. And that's great. It sparks something. But motivation fades. Emotions fluctuate. Discipline is what stays. Discipline is what shows up when inspiration is nowhere to be found. It's the early mornings when the bed feels too comfortable. The hard conversations you don't want to have, the small invisible choices you make when no one's watching, the decision to do what needs to be done even when your feelings don't cooperate. It's not glamorous. It's often not exciting. but it's the thread that weaves every worthwhile achievement together. There's a common misconception that discipline is only for the naturally strong-willed, that some people are just born with a higher capacity for self-control. But discipline isn't a personality trait, it's a practice. It's built, not inherited. And it starts with a simple question: what do I want most? And what am I willing to do every day to move toward it? See, most people don't fail because they lack talent or vision. They fail because they're inconsistent. They treat their growth like a project instead of a lifestyle. They commit when it's convenient. They follow through when it's exciting. But true growth doesn't work that way. Transformation happens in the mundane, in the repetition, in the moments where no one claps but you keep going anyway. That's discipline. And here's the beautiful part. Discipline creates freedom. It sounds paradoxical, but it's true. When you're disciplined with your time, you gain control over your life. When you're disciplined with your thoughts, you gain clarity of mind. When you're disciplined in your habits, you build momentum. You stop being reactive and start being intentional. You stop drifting and start directing. Think about someone who's deeply confident. That confidence didn't come from pretending. It came from the quiet assurance of having kept their word to themselves over and over again. That's what discipline gives you: integrity with yourself. And that kind of integrity builds a quiet, unshakable confidence that doesn't rely on praise or permission. It's important to remember that discipline is not about being perfect. You will mess up. You'll miss days. You'll lose focus. That's part of the journey. Discipline isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up. It's about shortening the distance between failure and recommitment. One bad day doesn't erase your progress. What matters is that you come back, that you recenter, that you remember why you started. The strongest people you know, mentally, emotionally, physically, they're not strong because they never struggle. They're strong because they've learned how to keep moving in the face of struggle. They've developed a relationship with discomfort. They've learned to value progress over perfection, consistency over intensity. And that's where the real power of discipline lies, in making the long-term choice over the short-term craving, in being loyal to your future self, not just your current feelings. Feelings are important, but they're not reliable leaders. They come and go. They change with weather, with sleep, with stress. But discipline roots you. It anchors you in something deeper. Your purpose, your values, your commitment to becoming who you're capable of being. When you commit to discipline, you're not just building habits, you're shaping identity. Every time you choose the difficult thing over the easy thing, you're casting your vote for the person you want to become. Every time you say no to distraction and yes to your vision, you're strengthening that bridge between where you are and where you're going. And over time, something amazing happens. The things that once felt difficult become natural. The habits that once felt forced become automatic. What once required effort now becomes part of who you are, not because it got easier, but because you got stronger. That's the power of discipline. It transforms you from the inside out. So ask yourself, what are the small things I can do every day to move closer to the life I want? What actions will I take even when I don't feel like it? What routines will I protect, not because they're convenient, but because they're aligned with my growth? And most importantly, am I willing to keep showing up, not perfectly, but persistently? Because if you are, you'll start to see the shift. You'll stop chasing the best version of yourself and start living into it. Not because of one big breakthrough, but because of 1,000 quiet choices made with intention. The truth is, discipline isn't punishment. It's self-respect in action. It's proof that you believe in your own potential enough to fight for it, even on the days when it would be easier not to. And in the end, that's what separates those who talk about change from those who create it. The bridge is there, the vision is clear, now walk it.